Hello and welcome to MissouriNet.com. I'm Bill Pollack, and I'm joined by Phil Kornblut of SportsTalkSC.com. He was at the Mizzou-Carolina game on Saturday and provided us with some stuff from Saturday as I was back home with taking care of a wife who's on the DL with knee surgery. I saw the game from my couch, Phil. I still don't believe what happened.
Yeah. Well, go back a year, and you're probably thinking the same thing about what happened in Columbia, Missouri, except now the shoe's on the other foot. South Carolina looked like a sure winner in this game with 7 minutes and 25 seconds to go. They score a nice touchdown to go up 13. Nobody even thinks about the fact that the book says you go for 2 in that situation. They really didn't think it was a big deal because the Gamecock defense had been playing so well up to that point. And then like lightning in a bottle, boom, 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 a big pass that Matty Mock made to Sasser, moves him down the field, another quick pass, and then before you know it, Hansbrough's in the end zone. All of a sudden, things are getting a little tight around the stadium. It's a 6-point game with plenty of time left, and Missouri gets a quick 3-and-out from South Carolina. Then here they come again on a longer drive, but they convert that fourth down at the USC 39. They drive it down inside the 5. South Carolina makes a little bit of a stand. And on fourth down, Mizzou knocks it in. And then USC 4 incomplete passes, and there you go. There's your win. So, I guess, as they say, a payback is hell. And that's what it was for Gamecock fans. They got paid back because they stole one in Columbia, Missouri last year, and the Tigers stole one in Columbia, South Carolina this time around.
Yeah, no doubt. It was one of those things. You talked about how things tightened up in the stadium, and I wanted to ask you about that because last year at the game, while I was here, you saw Mizzou rolling along, South Carolina not able to do anything, shut out for 3 quarters. And once they broke through, I kind of felt like a tension from the fan. You just felt that buzz from the stadium kind of disappear. And it was one of those things that I sensed, at least from watching it on TV, where it was one of those things where Mizzou did it so fast, it was kind of a shock that all of a sudden things that they were trying for 3.5 quarters didn't work, and now this long pass on first down, it just seemed like the stadium kind of felt something. Did you feel like the momentum of the game turned at that point?
Well, first of all, when South Carolina scored to go up 20-7, some of the fans started to hit the exits. I mean, they were pretty confident that South Carolina was going to win. And they were confident because the defense, like I said, had played so well. They had done a great job against Matty Mock. Matty had only 62 passing yards going into that next drive. So the Gamecock fans felt pretty good. They thought that this one was in the bag. So when they hit the big pass, and then, quickly scored on 3-4 plays. Yeah, it sent a little murmur of concern through the remaining Gamecock fans. They knew that at that point that the game was back within a 1 touchdown range of not only being tied but losing with an extra point. So there was a little bit of concern going through there. And then when the Gamecocks quickly went out on the next possession, and then Marcus Murphy, got to get my Marcuses right. Marcus Murphy took the punt back 22 yards and set Mizzou up at the 49. You had to think that this wasn't looking very good for South Carolina, that Missouri was possibly going to drive down the field, eat up the clock, and knock something in the end zone with little time left. And that's pretty much what they did.
Phil, I want to talk to you, and I want to get your view of South Carolina's offense, because what I saw from Missouri and their offense is it looked like the plan was to throw early, because in talking with Kevin McCrary from SportsTalkSC.com last week as we previewed the game, there were some questions about USC's secondary. So the game plan looked like, hey, have Matty Mock throw the ball, try to exploit that secondary perhaps. But the issue was that Jimmy Hunt, Mizzou's second wide receiver, got hurt. So Mock didn't have his number 2 receiver or his number 3 receiver, and all he had left was Bud Sasser. And they were doing a great job of pretty much shutting him down for most of the game. And so my frustration from the standpoint of watching it is, why aren't you attacking this game or this Gamecock defense with your two best offensive players, and that's Russell Hansbrough and Marcus Murphy. They were having success running the ball, both of them either at or over 5-point-something yards per carry. And I'm thinking, why aren't you running at them with your two best players to maybe open up the pass? And they just didn't do it. They didn't do it. They got lucky with the Sasser pass. And then after Murphy had that punt return, they tried two more passes, and they were left with a 3rd and 9, and they had to do that pitch out to Hansbrough to gain 9 yards and leave them still with a 4th and 1. The play calling was very questionable for Missouri's standpoint. Now, I look at it on the other side of the ball, and I'll get to you here as I kind of explain where I'm coming from. I look at it, and I'm looking at Missouri's defense, and I'm watching the way that they play, but I'm not familiar with USC's play calling or what they're doing offensively. To me, I was surprised they didn't run more screens like they did in the last game. What did you see from South Carolina's defense that kind of caused them to sputter, even though they put up 20 points, but at times it looked like they were sputtering as well?
Yeah. Well, if South Carolina played its best defensive game of the season, they played with a little more reckless abandon. Their secondary broke on the ball extremely well for the most part. I don't think Matty Mock had his best game. He wasn't on his game. You could tell he was overthrowing some guys. He was missing targets early on, and
he was tremendous pressure too.
Yeah, South Carolina got some of the best pressure they've gotten on a quarterback this season. Didn't sack him, but I think just one time. But they did make him uncomfortable. They did make him run around a little bit. Even still, you expect Matty Mock to hit on some of those passes, and he wasn't doing it. He was, I think, well off his passing game. Now, of course, South Carolina, to get pressure on him, they had to bring pressure, which meant that whenever they changed up and ran the football and they got past the first level, there was a lot of empty space out there for Hansbrough and Murphy to run through. So there just weren't defenders there. So I don't, like you said about South Carolina, I'm not that familiar with Missouri's normal play calling to know what they like to do on a regular basis and how different this might have been than per usual. Obviously, coaches look at the film. They see tendencies in the defense. They think they can attack. They try to go for the weaknesses, and they adjust their game plan. So the word on South Carolina was the secondary was a weak spot, so go after it. So that must have been what Missouri's thinking was. And, South Carolina did a really good job most of the night until the last 7 minutes of keeping the Missouri offense in check. Missouri only had 280 yards on the night, and they got 104 of them on those last two possessions. So that's how dominant USC was defensively until the last 7 minutes.
What really amazed me was the job that South Carolina did in stopping. Mizzou was just 2 of 16 on third down conversions, and one of those conversions was on that 18-yard touchdown run that we just saw from Russell Hansbrough on their first drive of the game. So they were 1 for 15 from that point on. I was really impressed with South Carolina's defense, although I thought that with Missouri's wide receivers and some of their issues there that Mock was playing perhaps a little shorthanded. Missouri's defense got to Dylan Thompson either 3 or 4 times with sacks. They had given up just 5 sacks in the first 4 games. What was going on with South Carolina's offensive line?
Well, and Missouri did a very nice job pressuring Thompson. He probably had more pressure in this game than he had in any particular game beforehand. And they should have expected that because, Missouri had 14 sacks coming in. I think they had 3 on the night. So Missouri is known for having good pass rushers, and so they were able to bring the heat on Thompson. South Carolina's offensive line did not have a particularly good night in pass blocking. They were down one starter on their offensive line. Their right guard was out. How much of a difference that made, I don't know. But and Thompson really wasn't on his game. He had been about a 64% passer coming into the game, and I think he was around 50% for this one. The pressure obviously made him move out of his comfort zone a little bit. He overthrew some people. He missed some open targets. I'll tell you what else Missouri did a real nice job at. South Carolina is very good at the dink and dunk passing game and yards after catch, and I thought Missouri had a really good plan with their defensive scheme for having tacklers around the short receivers and not letting them get extra yards after catch, and that forced South Carolina into a lot of punting situations.
Yeah, because that was the key last year. I mean, that's how Connor Shaw brought that team back. They dinked it off, and they had a lot of yards after the catch, and just finding that, and I wouldn't even say intermediate. It was more those dump off your safety valve pass and move the ball down the field at that standpoint. And that's, Mizzou, kind of a bend but don't break type of defense, and then they hope to shut things down once you get in the red zone. But yeah, they did a pretty solid job of that. I would agree from that point. All right, let's look big pictures. We talked with Phil Kornblut from SportsTalkSC.com. Big picture now in the SEC East. What's the mood there in Columbia, South Carolina, and how do you see their chances now as they play out, because they're halfway through their conference schedule already?
Yeah. Well, they're really up against it as far as the East is concerned. I was kind of running some things through my head this morning, and I mean, South Carolina's got 2 league losses now. Missouri, of course, just getting started in the league, so they have 0. Georgia's got 1 league loss, of course. Now, Georgia and Missouri are going to play in a couple of weeks, so obviously one of those is going to take a loss. I mean, what South Carolina needs, obviously, is for Georgia to beat Missouri, all right? Then they need Missouri to lose 2 more times. This is assuming USC can run the table in the SEC, which I don't think it can, because they still have to go to Auburn. They got Kentucky this week, still have to go to Auburn, still have to go to Florida. So they got 3 league road games left, and those are all pretty tough road games. When you think about Kentucky being an improved team, we know what Auburn is, and Florida still, despite their travails, they're still a dangerous team in the swamp. So I don't know that South Carolina can skate through without losing another SEC game. But let's just play devil's advocate from your standpoint and say that they do. Then they would need Missouri to lose 3 times, and I'm not sure that that's going to happen. And they need Georgia to lose at least 1 more time. That's the only way South Carolina can win the East, is Georgia have 2 losses because they got the tiebreaker there, but they need Missouri to lose 3 because Missouri has a tiebreaker on them. So South Carolina's chances of winning the East, I think, are pretty remote right now. What they need to do is just try and win as many games as they can, try and win their state championship game, and then get the best bowl game that they can line up.
Yeah, and that's that's the problem with the way they line these. And I would like to see the SEC schedule more of this Mizzou, South Carolina, Mizzou, Georgia stuff. I'd like to see them schedule that a little more closer to the end of the season, because I mean, this could have been a loss for Missouri, and then they really would have been behind the 8 ball. Now you look at South Carolina, and you're saying their chances are basically gone, and here we are, we're not even into October yet. And I think that really ruins the SEC schedule. I would rather see Missouri playing the Kentuckys and the Tennessees, and same thing with South Carolina, and make this game a little bit later in the season when perhaps there's more on the line. Now, I guess you could look at it the other way and say, well, one of those teams could be out of it, or both of those teams could be out of it, and then you've got a big division game that doesn't mean anything at the end of the year. But I would just think when you look at the way the rest of the conference is set up right now, in terms of Vandy and Kentucky and Tennessee kind of struggling, you'd like to see this USC Mizzou game maybe on the back end of the schedule when it means a little something more.
Well, the Gamecocks have kind of a weird schedule. They've played more league games than any other FBS team in the country. They've already played 4 conference games.
Yeah.
So, they knew early on they were going to be in it or they're going to be out of it. And so they're 2-2, and now they're home. They only have 3 home games left. They've got a home game with Tennessee, and then 2 non-league games. They got Furman, and they've got South Alabama. So it's not a very attractive rest of the home schedule for them, but that's how it played out this year. So they've got to take care of their business on the road. They've got 4 road games left, including they got to go to Auburn, Florida, and Clemson. Those are 3 really tough road games that you have to face. So it's going to be tough for them to have that big double-digit win season. And I've said to Gamecock fans over the past couple of years, as they were enjoying the fruits of the victories, I said, hey, how are you going to feel when it gets back to being 8 or 9 wins? And, everybody's greedy in college athletics, and they forget from where they came. And it wasn't too many years ago that any Gamecock fan would give you a leg for 8 wins. They'd give you a leg and an arm for 9 wins. But now 8 or 9 wins not going to satisfy them. That's going to feel like a complete failure of the season, especially if you lose the in-state rivalry game. So a season of great optimism to start is turning into a season of, despair, because at this point, I wouldn't project them to be more than 8-4, to be honest with you. Cannot see them beating Auburn on the road, and can't see them right now the way Clemson's going. Can't see them beating Clemson in Death Valley. And then there's always a trip to the Swamp. So they're looking like an 8-win team at this point.
Wow. Yeah, well, you know what? And listen, there's a lot out there for Missouri, too. They've got 7 games left, and there's no, not real too many gimmies. I mean, we saw Kentucky play tough. Vandy, you guys saw them against South Carolina. I mean, there's no free passes in this. And I still think the SEC East is wide open. Phil Kornblut from SportsTalkSC.com joining us here on this hangout as we recap a game that, like you said at the beginning, no one expected Missouri to lose last year, and I don't think anybody expected South Carolina to lose this year. But that's, as Tiger fans are figuring out, that's what's making this SEC conference and this SEC life for Mizzou very, very interesting. Phil, thanks for your time. Thanks for watching us here at MissouriNet.com.